You're listening to The Briefing, first broadcast on the 20th of November 2025 on Monocle Radio. Hello and welcome to The Briefing, broadcasting live from Studio One here at Midori House in London. I'm Chris Chermak. Coming up on today's program, can France and Germany retake their place as the engine of Europe? We'll ask the longtime writer, commentator, and Europe watcher David Marsh, joining me right here in the studio. After that, we'll have a look through the pages of Monocle's own bumper December-January issue out now with Sophie Monahan-Coombs and Alexis Self. And finally, it is Thursday, which means Fernando Augusto Pacheco, you are here for the Global Countdown. What do you have in store for us today, Faye?
Chris, it's great to be here. For today's Global Countdown, we're doing a special wintry playlist for Monocle Radio. But is it really wintry?
With you, Fernando, we never know, but we'll soon find out. All that right here on The Briefing with me, Chris Chermak. And welcome everyone to this Thursday edition of The Briefing. France and Germany have historically been the engine that makes Europe go. But of late, it has been sputtering. The centrist leaders Emmanuel Macron and Friedrich Merz are struggling to get on the same page, and in both countries, the far right, the AfD in Germany and National Rally in France are widely popular and could take over in future elections. Can Europe survive? That is the question and also the topic of my first guest's new book. David Marsh is the co-founder and chairman of OMFIF Economic Research and a longtime commentator on European affairs. David, it's very good to have you on the show. I wanted to start with that Franco-German relationship, maybe adding the UK in there, playing a role as well. Why is it still so important for Europe, even at a time when the European Union has other influences, nations further east?
Well, it is crucial that it functions well. At the moment, it's functioning very badly. And I think if we're lucky, it may simply plateau. I don't think the AfD will get into power in Germany, but I think the far right is likely to come into power at some stage and form the presidency in France. Whether you call it the far right or the populist right or the ultra right, they're obviously more right wing than conservative governments that we've had up to now. But I think he could actually succeed Merz if he's got another 3 years. Let's hope he makes it that long. Could, I think, coexist quite well with a French president who comes from the so-called far right. I think the reason why it's crucial is because they're the two countries in Europe which clearly are dominant in terms of economics. They're also dominant in terms of history. And also France is the country which is torn between north and south. And Germany is the country that's torn between east and west. So you've got all the kind of geographical loci somehow established with those two countries. They're both clearly in a paradoxical state in many ways because they are torn in different directions. They're both quite fragmented in different ways, probably Germany more than France with the regionalism that we have. And so they're both very interesting kind of microcosms. Each one of those countries is like a smaller version of Europe as a whole. That's why it does remind me of the Holy Roman Empire, because you do have a series of principalities even within individual countries, let alone the countries themselves, and then trying to make some whole out of this devilishly rich but also complicated series of intersecting polities amongst all those different countries, all with their rich seams of history, tradition, going back hundreds of years. You'd have to be a superhuman man or woman to make that work.
Well, speaking of superhuman men then, you did mention the current German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, and I did want to ask you a little more about him, also because you are quite critical, as many are these days, of Angela Merkel, the former German Chancellor who was in power for so long. In many ways, Merz is of the same party, but almost the antithesis of Angela Merkel. What's your sense of how he's doing?
Yes. Well, first of all, on Merkel, I was critical of her then, not just now, I have to say that. He's doing the right things in terms of his head. His heart is sometimes a little impulsive. He's not had much political experience. He was a member of the European Parliament.
Despite wanting this job for 2 decades, 3 decades.
Well, he was cast into the wilderness because he didn't get on with Merkel, so she sacked him from his position in the CDU parliamentary party, and then he went into business. He's never been a particularly rock star business person. He was head of the supervisory board of the Cologne Bonn Airport, for example, and he was head of the supervisory board of BlackRock in Germany. Did reasonably well also as a lawyer, learned how to fly his aeroplanes, which doesn't endear him to the great mass of the German population. He can speak and understand very well English and American. He's been to America 150 times, apparently. So he's got all sorts of very good business experience and a very sound man, quite a good speaker as well, I would say. But he's on to a hiding for nothing in terms of trying to forge a unity out of this rather unruly coalition with the CDU and the SPD. It's no longer the grand coalition, which you used to have in the old days between what were the two established parties. It's simply a coalition because the number 2 party is the AfD. And I would give him at the moment about 6 marks out of 10 for his stewardship since May when he took over. But that's above all because he's done very well on the foreign policy front by doing the right thing, I think, about Ukraine and also dealing relatively satisfactorily with the American president. I think he's not been very successful on the domestic front. He promised an autumn of reform a few months ago in terms of trying to reform some of the healthcare system, the social security and pension system, and also areas like industrial energy prices and so on. I would give him something like 3.5 marks out of 10 in terms of reforms.
And when you spoke of the foreign policy there, one aspect you didn't mention that I wanted to get into as well is China, because Germany's finance minister was also in China this week, Lars Klingbeil, deputy chancellor as well. You mentioned Friedrich Merz being relatively adept at managing the US. Europe, as you have spoken about, is caught between these two poles, the US and China. What is your sense of how Germany and Europe are wrestling with China in particular at this moment? Are they kind of leaning almost towards China because of the difficulties with the US, and that, of course, poses its own problems?
I think that China is deliberately mounting a policy under which it's going to be difficult for the Europeans to mount a completely wholesale attack on their links with China. I think the Chinese are going to be quite compliant with the Europeans in some cases because they do know it's a battle with the Americans. It's a battle that they mean to win, and they're going to do that also through stealthy diplomatic means rather than full frontal attack, say, on the German automobile industry. So I think there'll be market sharing agreements, for example, on electric cars. I think there's going to be a good deal of pragmatism on the Chinese side. They see Europe as a client state or a series of client states to be wooed, also using divide and rule principles. I think China will be the winner in the long term, actually, from this standoff, but it may take 100 years for us to see that. Germany is vulnerable here because it's got so much industrial capital invested in China. Britain is vulnerable because it simply relies on China for a great deal of investment to fund the current account deficit. So all these countries are vulnerable to different ways, and the Chinese, I think, are adept at exploiting those vulnerabilities. It's going to be very, very difficult for the German automobile industry to somehow take on the Chinese, because the Chinese are so far ahead in many ways, also with state subsidies and so on. So when Lars Klingbeil goes there, they're trying to develop more of a wholesale banking apparatus under which the renminbi and the euro can become somewhat more fungible with each other to allow investment in the two countries to take place. I applaud that. I think that if you can do that without antagonizing the Americans too much, you can also collaborate in all kinds of areas like mining for rare earths and things like that. You don't have to do things whereby you're going to always be antagonizing America. I think there's stealthy ways for the Europeans and the Chinese to act together. And no doubt Mr. Klingbeil, assisted by Mr. Nagel from the Bundesbank, will be helping in that endeavor.
Thanks very much, David, for joining us. That's all the time we have here today. That was David Marsh, chairman of OMFIF Economic Research Group and author of Can Europe Survive? The Story of a Continent in a Fractured World. And now here's Monocle's Carlotta Ribello with the day's other news headlines.
Thanks, Chris. U.S. President Donald Trump has signed a bill ordering the Justice Department to release the files it has related to the late convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Trump reversed his opposition to releasing the files after pushback from Epstein's victims and members of his own Republican Party. The Justice Department now has 30 days to release the information. Ukraine's government has authorized key businesses to purchase and use air defense equipment to combat Russian air attacks. The move would apply to energy, communications and transport companies, which would first be vetted by the National Security Service. The Defense Ministry says the decision will make civil air defense more effective and protect strategically important facilities from threats. And Turkey will host next year's UN Climate Summit, while Australia will lead the conference's negotiations among governments in a pre-summit to happen in the Pacific. The decision resolves the standoff between the two nations over who would stage COP31, as both have bidded to host proceedings back in 2022 and refused to stand down. The compromise deal was reached during ongoing talks in Brazil. Those are today's headlines. Back to you, Chris.
Thanks very much, Carlotta. Now, the holiday new bonanza issue of Monocle is out right now, actually, on newsstands today. And to give us a sneak peek of what to expect inside it, I am joined by Monocle's foreign editor, Alexis Self, and Monocle's associate editor for culture, Sophie Monaghan-Coombs. Good afternoon to you both.
Good afternoon,
Hi,
Chris.
Thanks for having us.
Good to have you here. How are we feeling in this sort of cozy studio? It's like freezing outside in London, but we've gotten a sort of... I don't know. I almost feel like we could have a fire in the corner here.
It's cozy. This feels a bit like a fireside chat, one of those modern phenomenons. It's very nice and cozy in here.
That's what we're going
warm
for.
glow.
Yeah, and the weather's turned this week, so I think it does feel much more Christmassy and seasonal, and so yeah, the issue is coming at just the right time, I think.
That is exactly what we're going for. Although I will say before that, are we ready? Like, are you already feeling Christmassy, Sophie? I mean, it is still mid-November, but I guess the cold does that to you a little bit.
Yeah, I think much more this week, and I was finding it very weird that it was so warm, but I haven't quite adjusted in terms of my layers, so I've found that even though the weather has changed, I haven't got my big thick coats out yet, and I just went for a little walk around the office and I was quite chilly, I have to admit.
Lex, did you get your full layers out already for the winter?
I think I'm underlayered today, although not in this studio. It's quite chilly. We were just at the decks with Steph and Carlotta, and it's much chillier in that room.
It is a little
They're
chilly.
all hunched up.
I feel a little worse.
But no,
when I'm
Christmas. Look, we're all looking forward to Christmas, but let's wait till the 1st of December to really, lean into it, I think.
Yes, no, that's fair enough. Although, that said, of course, today is the sort of holiday issue of Monocle. Lex, I see you've got both covers there. We've got like so many issues of the magazine hanging around here. Let's just start with the covers. What do we think? It's a double issue. Sophie, what do you make? What's your favorite? We've got sort of Christmas jumpers on one of the covers and vaulting ahead into the new year, a guy doing the pole vault.
Yes, well, that's the one I've picked up because it is my personal favourite. I love the starry sky, but the other one is very festive. And I have to say that putting together this issue, and I think particularly with two special covers, did make me feel very festive. And there's lots of fun Christmassy things inside, but also things that make you sort of excited about January and the new year and the new opportunities that it'll bring.
Absolutely, and we'll get into some of that. Lex, this is also, although it's not sort of on the cover this time specifically, we've gone for that holiday look, but it is also the soft power issue, which is your forte, and that's always what happens in December and January. We look at soft power of countries. How did we do that this time?
Yeah, so that's a theme running through the issue. There is a separate piece on which countries performed particularly well this year in terms of soft power, and then highlighting perhaps some areas of improvement for countries that generally do well but have had a bit of a tricky year, like for example France.
Very tricky year for France.
So yeah, well, just politically, which obviously isn't exactly soft power, but kind of spreads not a very enticing or kind of stable impression around the world.
It does put a dent, doesn't it, into a country's soft power if they're completely unstable politically. Like, it's just the way that others look at it.
Yeah, exactly. And especially countries that are seen as kind of paragons of stability, or at least political stability, you know, given a kind of long history of you know, representative democracy, etc. But you know, France's brands and luxury brands that are, again, such a big facet of its soft power haven't, like the luxury sector more broadly, have had a challenging past 12 months. And then, you know, as the illustration proclaims for this, there's an amusing illustration for this piece, which has a few soft power icons putting decorations on a tree, and the star at the top of the tree is being placed by what looks a bit like the Louvre burglars who used that cherry picker to break in through the window. And again, you know, the Louvre, such a kind of shining star of French cultural power, and to have been, you know, in broad daylight burgled like that, again, not good for the country's image abroad.
Not necessarily. Sophie, to look at some of the cultural stuff, that's an element of soft power, I suppose, as well, though we do this in our own way. We don't necessarily focus on the soft power. There's a lot to get through. I know you also have like 2025 culture wrap and highlights. So what struck you in this issue?
Well, the thing that I would like to highlight is my lead culture story all about the Royal Danish Ballet. It's a really old institution, and we went behind the scenes for a performance of Swan Lake, and the photos are really beautiful. I would really recommend getting the magazine, looking at this in print, and the photos are huge and really lovely. And there were just so many fascinating things that I found out. So there is someone whose sole job, excuse the pun, is looking after ballet shoes, because there are thousands of pairs. The lead dancer might get through 2 pairs per performance. All of the tutus,
really, they like swap halfway through.
Yeah, they have to, because they wear them out. And they're all specially made, handmade for their feet. All of the tutus are handmade in England, actually. And the tutus and the costumes are so ornate and so intricately made that they actually aren't washed very often, and they kind of go between performances in different years. And so they actually get really sort of smelly, and but the dancers find that there's this kind of special aura about wearing a costume worn by a great dancer historically. So
there's like a superstition there? Is that almost what it's
a little bit? Yeah, it just feels like an honor. What a privilege to be dancing in the same costume. So I think it's a really lovely piece. The photos are great, and I found out so much about what goes into the ballet as I was working on it.
Well, Lex, another positive story that I found interesting in this, which, I mean, it's not about the holidays necessarily, but to kind of be uplifting about, you know, there's so many negative stories going on around the world these days, but Leila Milana Allen has written a story about Beirut and its revival, and I did find that interesting after a number of tough years for that city that's actually doing quite well.
Yeah, well, it might not be necessarily Christmas-y in a kind of very obvious way, although it is very close to the Holy Land, Lebanon, Beirut. It's about soft power, though. Of course, you know, Beirut is the party capital of the Middle East, or at least always has been, and it's an amazing city. You know, incredibly diverse, cosmopolitan. You know, beautiful geographical setting. With the Corniche, and of course was known as the Paris of the Middle East in the 50s and 60s because of its vibrant culture, and you know has had a very tough few decades, but particularly tough few years. You know, the spillover of the war in Gaza, and you know the Israeli incursion into Lebanon and fighting Hezbollah in the south of the country, but also in the south of Beirut. So, you know,
and the Beirut blast, of course.
Well, exactly, yeah, of course. So you know, in the past few years, it's been kind of at its lowest ebb. But then, strangely, you know, the beginning of this year, against all odds, actually, a new government was sworn in, a government that, a Lebanese government that kind of eschewed the sort of tribalism of post-Civil War years. There wasn't this kind of makeup of the relatives of warlords, and there were quite a few people from the private sector, and there's the impression, at least, and I think that they've followed through on this, that this is a government that's finally working for the people and trying to undo a lot of the wrongs that have happened in the past few decades and in the past few years. So, yeah, this summer, there was a real return of tourists. Gulf countries lifted travel advisories, and of course Gulf visitors are very important for Beirut. And then, an amazing return of people who had left, especially young people, following the blast. And we speak to a few of those people, and there's some really nice photography to accompany the piece. So it is a positive news story in a region that perhaps is lacking those recently.
Sophie, just finally, culture picks for 2026. Are we looking that far ahead already in this issue as well, getting ready for the new year?
Yes, of course. There is lots to come. In the magazine, we have some of our top picks from what came out this year. You can catch up over the holiday period. We've got book recommendations, but we're also looking ahead to what is coming out next year. There's a few, there's a few people who have big albums that have been kind of long awaited. Maybe the best example of that is Madonna, but there's also a new Dune film. There's obviously lots of fantastic books coming out. And in this issue, we've kind of got what you should be caught up on, what we'd recommend from this year, but also some things to sort of have on your radar that are on the horizon.
Monocle's Alexis Self and Sophie Monahan-Coombs, thank you very much for joining us. You're listening to The Briefing on Monocle Radio. And it is time now, as it always is at this point on a Thursday, for the Global Countdown with our senior correspondent, Fernando Augusto Pacheco. Fernando, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Chris. Good to be here.
You are, of course, our musical curator as well, which is important for this week. We're taking a closer look at Monocle's own playlist because once again, you've been busy tinkering.
I am on fire. I'm adding a lot of tracks. You know why? Because the last quarter of the year is a very exciting one musically. All artists are releasing new music, but also I think, the mood is changing. Christmas is approaching. Don't worry, there will be Christmas songs in the playlist.
I'm sure there will. So we're not there yet.
Not there yet.
It is still November, Are you a fan in that sense of waiting until December? Like we don't have to get too early into the Christmas spirit.
For Christmas songs, yes. Not for the lights. I do like the lights, especially because we live in a very dark city in the winter. So I want the lights. I want Christmas trees. That I don't mind. But Christmas songs, I am happy to wait a tiny bit more.
Okay. So what is the theme then if this is not Christmas songs? Is there a theme for what you've added?
There is a theme. It's wintry tracks. There's some old ones, some Japanese, Brazilian. It's good stuff. We're going to start with...
Wintry goodness.
Wintry goodness. We're going to start with a legend from Japanese music. His name is Haruomi Hosono. I think many of our listeners might know him. And this track, although it's from 1975, there's been kind of they're reissuing the album that it came from. I mean, the title of the album is not very wintry. I don't care. It's called Tropical Dandy. But
so that's a rough start for our wintry goodness,
yes. I love that title so much. But the song's called Kino Kaido. Let's have a listen. And number 5, Haruomi Hosono.
could see like sitting with a hot chocolate listening to that.
Because I think this season is also, for me, it's about longing for the sunnier climates as well. You know, there is something very strong about that in the season.
That is a fair amount. That's a fair point. That's for those people who want to head south for the winter, migrate for the winter.
I might do that myself, you know, as I have to do every year to see my family in Brazil. He's the founding member of the Yellow Magic Orchestra, an iconic electronic trio as well from Japan. So, I mean, I'm a big fan of the man.
All right. Well, where do we head from there? Are we still staying tropical?
It's not tropical, but it's very sweet. And I'm a big fan of Thundercat. I mean, he's a mainstay here on the Monocle playlist. I have to say, I love this cover he did of Diana Ross, Upside Down. But then I found out a bit more about the story of the song. I don't know, I felt mildly conflicted, but it's still pretty good. And I'll tell you why I felt mildly conflicted. Let's have a listen. Thundercat, Upside Down, Candy Crush.
Okay, what's the controversy?
Okay, it's very addictive. I love it, like candy, right? But basically, it's been a partnership between Thundercat and the Candy Crush saga. So it's a massive project. So there's a website you can go and you can play some sort of game where they play this track. So it's kind of a multi-sensorial kind of experience. So
while playing Candy Crush?
Yes. The saga,
sure.
Which I never actually played Candy Crush, so I'm not the best person to tell you about this. And I had no idea, but I was doing my, a little research, and so yeah, they did this partnership.
I mean, I have dabbled in Candy Crush, but I'm not sure how that would work together with. I mean, I just play it on my phone, so do I have to like put headphones on and listen to the music while playing Candy Crush?
Yes, and apparently there's a special edition. Listen, I'm not doing a promo about that. I haven't been paid, where you have a lollipop as well. And the lollipop vibrates while you play that game that plays this track. This is getting very complicated. Honestly,
maybe we should move on. That is getting very complicated.
I think we should
It's
move
like
on.
a virtual reality Candy Crush.
God.
Oh my. Okay. But it's a good track.
Let's head to Australia via Paris. It is my favorite technopop princess at the moment, and her name is Sanquili Love Lasso.
Love Lasso.
I love it. It gives me goosebumps. And,
it has a certain 80s style to it, I feel like we're returning to here.
She's a big fan of Italo Disco. And can I say, Chris, this has been the year of Italo Disco return in a way. It's everywhere. Before there was a niche community online. Now it's everywhere. You see musicians like Mind Enterprises and many, many others. And Sanquili, I have very happy news for you. Finally, she's releasing her album in January next year. It's called Jawbreaker. So we're going to start the year very well, dancing on a dance floor for sure.
You're optimistic about this new album. It's going to be a good one.
It's going to be great. I mean, Sanquili didn't do any bad song yet. So okay. I'm confident.
High praise and high pressure for the new album. What do we have at number 2?
Let's play some modern bossa nova by a French-Brazilian musician. His name is Thiago Caetano. It's a very Brazilian name, but he's French-Brazilian. The song's called Só Quero Viver. And again, I know it's winter, but I decided to pick only very sunny tracks. Okay? Let's have a listen.
E foi assim que eu vi lágrimas no teu olhar, oceano de tristeza que irradia atrás e da bruma,
Fernando, I think we need to amend the theme for this. It's a little more in the direction of resisting winter with tropical blasts, summer blasts.
I hate feeling constrained, so... but what a great tune. And his voice sounds very much like one of my Brazilian music heroes, Jorge Ben. It's perhaps it's the modern Jorge Ben. I don't know. It's the beginning of his career. But I think it's a pretty good tune.
All right, where have we headed? Is this your favorite, the final number one?
I wouldn't say my favorite, but I think perhaps this one fits the spirit of winter more than the other ones.
Okay, we actually have a winter track now.
You tell me, you're the winter expert. I want you to listen to this. I just find it very warm, sexy, and luscious, okay? It is...
all things you associate with winter, absolutely.
Of course, it is Peyton and Sunny Column, Get Out of Your Hair.
Lately I've been reaching for the stars, trying to be what's meant for me. Some days, sometimes twilight, dancing in the dark. Get out of your head.
Winter can be sexy as well, Chris.
I'm really trying here, Fernando. I'm trying. I mean, maybe like by the fireside, like they have a fire going. Would you listen to that track? It's kind of wintry, but I mean, we're stretching this a little bit, Fernando. I do think this is more like it's November. We don't want winter to arrive yet. So let's have some nice, summery, sexy tunes.
With a nice glass of champagne. Champagne is wintry, I think.
Champagne is wintry. I'll give you the champagne.
See,
We can reach an agreement.
I think so as well. Thank you, Chris.
Fernando Augusto Pacheco, always good to have you on the Global Countdown. That's all the time we have for this edition of The Briefing. It was produced by Carlotta Ribello, our researcher was Joanna Moser, and our studio manager was Christy O'Grady. The Briefing is back tomorrow at the same time. I'm Chris Chermak. Goodbye, and thanks for listening.